It's rough out there, you know, in the world. Some of us turn to writing for solace and inspiration. Text that helps us take in the dark and find the light. So if you are someone who wraps themselves in words to warm your heart, or maybe just looking for a little help getting through the day, week, year, join us as we talk to people about the pieces of writing they use to bolster their souls and remember their way. The good bones that remind us we can make this place beautiful. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Finding Good Bones, a podcast exploring the text that takes us through the dark and shifts our perspective to the light. I wasn't planning on saying that, but I did say it. But now I'll just introduce Amy, my co-host.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Amy, and I'm the co-host of this podcast. And Kate, you didn't say your name.
Oh, shoot. My name is Kate.
And we are co-hosts. Yeah. We are co-hosts of this very organized podcast.
So organized. Yeah. So welcome to already listening. Amy, what are you reading right now?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So right now I'm rereading for probably the 32nd time, Good Omens, because I've told you about this. I always need a light. The other thing I'm reading is The Witches Are Coming by Lindy West. And so those two are my like light dark theme of the podcast. So she wrote it during the Trump administration, and she is like, it'll be better. And I don't know. So she was trying to give us a light. She was trying to talk about truth and how it might get more truthy. And I'm just not sure. So that's why I'm reading Good Omens along with it.
Which is not truth at all, but a lot of fun. I am currently reading Atomic Habits, which is a book by, I believe it's James Clear, who it's all about kind of ways to build up good habits. So I need a lot of that in my life. Yeah. Well, atomic, because they're like the building blocks. Okay, I'm just in the first couple of chapters, but the building blocks of our lives, our habits.
It works.
Yeah. So exciting stuff. So that's what we're reading right now, but it is not just us on today's episode. We have with us the amazing Genevieve Saenz. Genevieve is based in Austin, Texas, and an expressive arts therapist and celebrant. Her practice, Passageway Arts, was started in 2012 and focuses on life transitions, relationship repair, bereavement, and creative expression. She's also a mom, gardener, and lifelong poet, and a very dear friend of mine. Full discretion. That's what it is. Full discretion. Hi, Genevieve.
Hi, Kate. Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Yeah, what a delight.
You are our first recorded guest. So I don't know if that'll make it in the podcast or not, but you know it.
I know.
And if it does, it'll just explain a whole lot as we move forward. It
makes me feel really special.
Yeah, it should. You are special. So, as we've explained to you and our listeners, this podcast is all about the pieces of text that help us both kind of take in the sadness and the hardness of the world, but then shift our perspective to the hope and kind of how we can live in it and live with that and not be completely downtrodden all the time. And so you have brought us a piece.
Yes, I have.
And what piece is that?
So this poem is called The Risk of Birth by Madeleine L'Engle, and I'm going to read it now. This is no time for a child to be born, with the earth betrayed by war and hate, and a comet slashing the sky to warn that time runs out and the sun burns late. That was no time for a child to be born in a land in the crushing grip of Rome. Honor and truth were trampled to scorn, yet here did the Savior make his home. When is the time for love to be born? The inn is full on the planet Earth, and by a comet the sky is torn. Yet love still takes the risk of birth.
Whew.
So,
Yeah, I love it. Amy, how?
I love it. I loved it when you first sent it to us, and I love the feeling that you put into it, and it showed how important it was to you. Love it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about your relationship with this piece.
Sure.
How were you first? How did you find it?
I don't know. Probably the internet. So, isn't
Yeah.
that right? So,
Look,
yeah, this
it's going to
poem,
be so many people's answers. It
Right.
was just mine.
Well,
The internet.
Poems come to us when we need them. I really have a very spiritual sense of, particularly about poetry, but about all art, that a lot of the time, the universe, or whatever we want to imagine it is, gives us the poem we need in that time. And for me, the time when this poem came to me was November, December 2014. So I'm going to take you back. That was a long time ago. Obama was president. Remember
Yeah.
Hope? Y'all remember Hope?
I do.
We do.
Yeah.
So a long, long time ago. And this is also so interesting because at the time I was pregnant. I was 8 months pregnant. And my due date was December 3rd, 2014. And I was, it was my first child. And I was, as all new mothers are, just like really terrified. I think I knew the world was about to change for me forever. And I didn't know what to expect or not to expect. And this is way back, but I don't know if y'all remember Ebola. Yeah.
That one.
Remember that pandemic? And it really wasn't a pandemic, but it was in the news really strong at the time. Like there was Ebola and it was going to spread or not spread. And there was all this fear about it. And I was pregnant with this baby. And even then, even in December 2014, the world felt like it was a terrible place to have a child. Just horrible. I couldn't imagine. I would read about horrible things happening in the news, and I just couldn't imagine wanting to bring another soul into this place where there's so much pain.
Now, did you think about that before you got pregnant, or was that something that kind of came up as it was happening?
That's a really good question. The other context here is that my father had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2012. So I was sort of rushing to have this baby so they could be together and have some time together. So I think I was acutely aware of life and death and the fact that I was birthing someone because someone else was dying. Right. And so that is a really specific thing that felt both remarkably hopeful and remarkably hopeless.
Yeah. I think that actually perfectly captures, what we're talking about on this podcast, right? Or finding, or I guess at times creating these lights. And I'm sure that wasn't just a light for you, but also a light for your father as he is traveling into, let's just say, the unknown.
Yeah.
It really, I think that pregnancy and birth, one of the things from this poem, the risk of birth, because there is so much risk. And it's something, I think especially we are all women. We were all cis women. And I think especially in this time where reproductive rights are being discussed, we are kind of bombarded with so much of the risk, right? That it doesn't always go smoothly. And the repetition in this poem And especially that line, it's the title, but going throughout, and then also the ripping of the comet through the sky. As somebody, full transparency again, I did give birth one time, and she's a toddler now, but that imagery, right, that felt very visceral for me as somebody who has pushed a human out of her body. It's not just the risk of birth. There's also something about that comet that very much resonated with me, or this idea of birth, even though that's not entirely, I think, what she was talking about in that moment. But that, and then I guess also that changing, the ripping apart, the tearing down of a personal world, never mind the whole outside world, right? But the inside world as well.
Right. And we're never ready. We're never ready for the type of that type of change. Like people are always like, oh, it's the wrong time to have a baby. But it's like, I think one thing that this poem really talks about is like, there's never a good time for that.
It's always the wrong time. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also beautiful. I also love the contrast in this piece. Do you have a particular line that you love about it, or that?
I think the last line, like love, what is it? Love risks birth. Is that right? Back to it. Yeah. Love still takes the risk of birth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this would be a good time to mention Christianity. Because both the poem and Madeleine L'Engle have a lot to do with Christianity, and my relationship to Christianity is sort of storied, like a lot of people's. There's a lot of different ups and downs. There's a lot of, religious and spiritual wounding out there that Christianity has provided the world. And there's also, I think, a lot of beautiful spiritual gifts in the stories of Christianity. So when I approached this poem, it was as someone who was actually working at a church, a very liberal church. So maybe that's actually how it came to me, was I was researching poems for Advent or something. And in the relation to Mary, right, to this figure of a mother awaiting this transformation that she can't imagine, right? And the power of continuing to birth under those circumstances, and the agency she had. I think there's we see her as just sort of a figure who was impregnated by God and had to have this baby. But no, she had great agency in this story, in my opinion. And as a mother, I have to hold her as someone who had agency, who really chose to be in the world at that time, doing that work. And that's what mothers do. So I think when I was reading this poem, I was grappling with, I've made this choice. Here I am.
Yeah.
And it's so terrifying to be on this precipice. And I'm not alone. So many women throughout time have made this choice. And not just women, just like you said, people who've birthed things, right? People who have made things come to life. It's scary when you get to when you get to Advent, right? It's scary when you're like, it's coming.
Yeah. I mean, I think when for people who aren't familiar with Advent, it's the preparing time, right? It's the preparing of the Christian church for the birth of Jesus. And I think there's also something to that too, the time before change. And that might be why pregnancy is such a, we don't always get the time before change, right? We aren't always able to recognize it, right? Because there are the prepared for changes. And I think that actually there is this really beautiful and heartbreaking symmetry, right? You did also get this time with your father.
Yes.
So you were preparing for that at the same time that you're preparing, to become a mother. And so I think the Advent liminal space, right? Yeah. Because what you do know about it is that it ends. In fact, that's what you're getting ready for.
Right. One way or another, something's going to change.
Yeah. And I, that's something that I hold on to, that concept, right? That no matter what, it's going to change. That's certainly something that I hold on to both in good times and in bad times. In good times, it's a little like, oh, Well, one might call that anxiety. But it is something that gets me through hard times as well, that, you know what? I can't see it right now, but this will change.
Definitely it will.
So, yeah. Well, that felt like a podcast. Or Amy, I feel bad because we have birthed humans and you have birthed other things. And so I guess I'm curious a little bit. I definitely want to hear a bit of kind of how this struck you.
I mean, it struck me in a lot of ways the way I think it struck you. I don't have the visceral feeling of birthing a child, but I do have children I love, birthed by relatives and friends. Your little goblin, one of them. And and I am terrified too. It wasn't my decision for those to come along, but it's also a risk for everyone who loves them. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Because life is such a risk, and I think that's part of the poem that I really loved when I read it, was like, no matter what I do or I don't do, life is going to find a way. It's like Jurassic.
Yeah.
Right? And it goes on. And that's the love is what births things, right? It's life's longing for itself is so strong.
Yeah.
That we birth through natural disasters. Because life longs to live. And that's just such an intense miracle. My goodness. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think back to... Oh, you go, Amy.
Oh, that's what you just mentioned, Jurassic Park. That's how I read the... That's how I read that.
Nature finds a way.
Yeah. Exactly. That's how I read the final stanza, is that, there's currently there, this is not a time, then there's that was not a time when the Savior was born, and then there's a third, the comet ripping across the sky, and I read that as the original big crash that destroyed most of the life on Earth. That's how I read that, because I feel like she's going backward in time, and so I thought, even then, when a comet had destroyed everything, there were still animals, somebody, risking birth.
I love it.
Right?
You know, I hope Madeleine L'Engle believed in dinosaurs.
Oh, she did. She was,
she was great. She was great.
In science fiction.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, I do actually. I've read many of her books.
Yeah. What a gift she is.
But I love taking it back too, right? So there's kind of recorded history that grounds this. And then there's before that with the, and it all comes back to the unknowing, which is that risk, right? Yeah. The risk of birth is not knowing. Okay, well, now this feels like a podcast.
Bravo.
Thank you so much, Genevieve, for being a part of this today. Is there anything that you've got going on that you would like to talk about or promote, or where you would like to direct anybody to go to learn more about you and the very important and wonderful work that you do? I will say that, working with like liminal spaces and changes and transitions, Genevieve has a number of workshops and like courses that are available online at her website.
Just go to Passageway Arts if you like me. Go there, because I have a lot of content there. And if you like hearing me or listening to me, that's the place to go. PassageWayArts.com. And there's lots of different stuff in there.
Okay, we'll also put a link to that in the show notes so people can find it.
Yeah, it'll be easy. And we'll like tag you. Because we know how to do the internet here at Finding Good Bones. So
you say one more thing, which is that it's really appropriate. Okay, you can cut this.
No, do it. Say it.
I just want to say it's really appropriate that y'all are risking the birth of this podcast right now. That this poem that is about like starting a thing and how hard it is sometimes to start a thing, and how what a large labor and push it is, right? To start a thing and have it be birthed and not know where it's going to go or walk in the world once it's here. Yeah. That's a big part of it, is you don't know what's going to happen. I just want to name it's really cool that y'all are doing this.
That's why we planned it
Thank
this way, Genevieve. It wasn't you happening to bring this poem to us. We picked no, Genevieve. This
when we need them, right?
It's a beautiful connection that you made that was not pre-planned, but it is quite wonderful. So here is the part in the podcast when we get a little bit further on where we will make recommendations. So you can email us or go to our website, findinggoodbones.com, or email findinggoodbones@gmail.com. If you enjoy words and text and it helps you get through things and you're looking for a little personalized one for you, we'll just ask for a little bit of information about you. And then you can tell that to us. And then Amy and I, and potentially whatever guest we have on, we'll see, we'll make a recommendation just for you. So, but it's not quite ready yet. So it's not happening today.
No.
We're doing the prep work. We're in the pregnancy of that segment.
Nice way to bring it around, Kate.
Yeah. I feel like if you have to say that's a nice way to do something, then it was perhaps not.
Oh, hush.
But this is Genevieve. It's been wonderful speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to have you back someday. And thank you, everybody, for listening and going with us as we are finding good bones.